My guest today in the Nimataion is Joshua Cutchin, and together we're spinning a yarn. Joshua, great to have you here. You're a very prolific and great author. I love your books. You're a musician, tuba player, and always great talking to you. Great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here, and it's always, there are sometimes when I speak with people and I'm not able to connect as quickly as I'd like, and to be able to talk about some of the things, some more advanced concepts. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Bernard.
Thank you. And a very quick way to connecting is talking about stories. What has been your favorite story as a child?
Well, I'm gonna do the predictable American kid thing, but I'm gonna try to justify it, and honestly, just say Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and it was sort of a circuitous route. I remember distinctly that my mother and father had some friends over, and they wanted to watch uh, a movie that was inappropriate for children. So I did what a lot of parents of the era did. They put me behind the couch and gave me some toys and said, "You do this and don't don't watch the movie." And I didn't. I was a good little boy, right? But I was very much upset at being sort of cut out of the action. So my father bought me a little, Micro Machines playset of the Battle of Hoth from The Empire Strikes Back. And I hadn't seen Star Wars, and I was just I don't know why. Gosh, I must have been probably 7 or 8 or something, or 6. And I just hadn't seen Star Wars, and I was really curious to find out more about this. And then I did, and it was kind of my thing for a long time. You know, I before I before I immersed myself in the paranormal and whatnot, I was immersed in a lot of the Star Wars stuff, and I always would play. I remember even through college, I would play a game with my friends, which was like, you can ask me any Star Wars question, with the caveat that you can't ask me the names of any of the Imperial admirals, because that was like a blind spot that I had, or the Ewoks, no Ewok names, because that was another blind spot that I had. But looking back on it, I think it taught me a lot of things. I think that essentially those are children's films, no matter how much the fan community wants to try to make them something other. They're children's films, but they're children's films that do such a good job, such a distilled, engaging job of the Campbellian hero's journey, and putting a lot of different motifs in there, that you know even today when I'm writing about archetypes and monomyths in general, it's like, well, yeah, that's also in Star Wars. And I don't think to a certain degree that George Lucas even knew that he was doing that. But I was thinking about this today in preparation for our conversation, and I was very involved in the early years of Wikipedia, which was the Star Wars Wikipedia. And my mind has changed a lot since then, and my thinking's changed a lot since then, and my writing has changed a lot since then, obviously. But I think what that did was it gave me a real love for the research, for going back through books and looking for connections and trying to compile everything in one case, because I still, much to my embarrassment, have a lot of Star Wars reference books. Those are that's something that exists. Star Wars reference books. I still have a lot of them in storage. But combining those together and saying where they came from, I'm like, oh, it's kind of exactly what I do now in a lot of ways, albeit with this fictionalized universe. Um, so yeah, I think that's one thing that's important for young people, is to encourage them to not to force them into something that will give them skills for the future, but to encourage them to find something that they find engaging, that is teaching them something that they don't even realize that they're learning. And
Mm.
I think that Star Wars sort of occupied that role for me to a degree.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you came up with the Battle of Hoth, because that was my first encounter with Star Wars.
Oh, there you
I
go.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was 9 at the time, and it was the first time I was away from home, alone in sort of a summer camp.
Mhm.
And it was in former Yugoslavia, nowadays Croatia, and they had this open air cinema, and they showed The Empire Strikes Back, and we didn't know anything about it,
Mhm.
and it was in Serbo-Croatian or something like that. We didn't understand any of it, but it had such a massive impact on us, like these this battle, I really was blown away. It was huge, you know. It was like and also it was not in a cinema. It was under the stars.
Under the stars. That sounds pretty magical. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the others in this night, he had a nightmare because he dreamed of being Han Solo being enclosed. And he ran through the whole sleeping room crying, and it had this whole, I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. But I just felt this archetypal story and how it moved all of us, and we played the days afterward for hours and hours. What we didn't get cognitively, but emotionally. And
yeah, I mean, that's the thing about those movies is that I think you could watch them in any language probably, and you would still walk away with the basic structure of it. You know? Which, I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of criticisms you can level at George Lucas, but you know, he's on record as saying that he doesn't really care for dialogue much, and you can kind of tell that because it's not only is his dialogue bad in the prequels especially, although I would argue that a lot of the dialogue in the originals is pretty bad as well, but he is telling these stories that are just so primal. And I will say that in this newer, you know, set of films that have come out, the sequel trilogy, as the fandom calls it, that's absent. They're not dealing with what little bit they are dealing with those broader themes is just repeating what was from the originals. And you know, I think that really I think that shows. Yeah, exactly. I think it shows that there's not that underlying structure and that underlying consistency and that underlying universality to it all.
Did you have a character that you resonated with most, or that you impersonated when playing, or something like that?
That's a good question. I think that it would probably have to be. This is such a nerd answer. It would probably have to be Boba Fett, who isn't really a character in those films, right? And you know, there's that new Disney Plus show which I watched, and it was not great, in my opinion. But you know, the design was really engaging. And then, you know, supplementing with all this was the thing about it, is for me it wasn't even just the movies, it was also like this corpus of expanded literature and video games and stuff that sort of added and brought nuance to it. And the idea, I mean, that was one of the earliest shared universes that we saw on that level. I mean, you know, Lovecraft was a shared universe too, but like, but you know, everybody has a shared universe now, Marvel and all these other things. But that was really the first, I guess, multimedia shared universe where you kind of, to understand everything, you kind of had to be plugged into a couple of different things to really get a full scale picture. And you know, it's interesting. It's been interesting to see how Star Wars has become as nerdy as like football. Like, it's no longer this niche thing. And it's really ironic to me that the same kids who would make fun of me for saying the word Mandalorian are now watching this television show called The Mandalorian, right? You know, the nerds have slowly taken over everything. But I think it's kind of lost a little bit of its magic that way. Not to try to sound exclusionary, but like, you know, it was kind of for us for a while, and now it's for everybody. And I think the same thing happens in the paranormal, right? Like, you know, whenever things get that big of a scope, it kind of gets watered down and it doesn't really have the same magic because everybody knows just enough to be dangerous, I guess is one way to put it.
Yeah, well said. So it's of the utmost importance to go deep, and that's what you do in your work. Once again, I can only emphasize people read Josh's books about the paranormal. They're among the best there are. And yeah, thank you for taking us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Josh. Great to see you again. See
Likewise.
You. The world is magical.
Yes, sir.
And of course, link to your homepage is in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Bye.
Yeah, bye.